The soulmate attraction is the strongest attraction in the universe between yourself and another person. That's the strongest attraction that you can that is present, that God created. Now, if you're repelling your soulmate, it means there must be a lot of
big emotions in there.
Resistance. Yeah, that's what it means. So see, most people don't think of it that way. You know what how they think of it. Go, oh, maybe if I just deal with one thing more, it'll all be resolved, and I'll have dealt. You know, I'll attract my soulmate. It's not like that at all. You're going to have quite a lot of things to deal with to attract your soulmate, because the reality is, if you haven't already attracted your soulmate, it means there must be a lot of repulsion going on. Does that make sense? A lot of repulsion. Now, I had to come to terms with this myself, right? I had to come to terms with that. Oh, I'm always thinking about my soulmate. I always want my soulmate with me. I had a terrible feeling of missing my soulmate. And in fact, that was one of the repulsions. The actual feeling.
The need.
The need, it was an addiction. So I had to remove that. So I had to go through grieve a lot of grief, which was, in our case, because we had a separation, there's more grief than what you could probably imagine at this point, associated with a soulmate relationship. And so I had to go through all that grief. So I spent a lot of years grieving. So in my case, I spent over 3 years grieving almost every day, right? And when I say almost every day, usually, as I've explained to people, it's lasted me sometimes from 2 to 4 hours every day, grieving. Now, you won't have to deal with that much, right? Anywhere near that much. But at this stage, you both need to become aware that you are repelling your soulmates. Because the natural attraction is for your soulmate to be drawn to you, right? That's how God created it to be. The fact is, if my soulmate's not drawn to me, I must be repelling them. And this is where you need to start with reality, like saying, okay, I must be repelling them. What emotions in me are repelling them? Right? And if you have a look at the addictive relationships with your sons, you will actually start identifying a lot of those emotions, because a lot of the emotions are actually present in this addiction that you created. And in fact, you created these addictions with your sons, both of you. And you've got to see it as actually a creation that you purposely did in order to avoid a lot of personal pain. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Albeit without awareness.
I don't agree that you weren't aware, no. No, see, these are things we like to tell ourselves when we're in our addiction. We like to say, when we become first intellectually aware of an addiction, we often go, oh, but I didn't know.
Right.
And I'm going, I don't think you can say that. If you have a good look at your life, you can see how much you've become reliant on these boys, how much you've desired from them, how upset you get when they don't give you what you want. Like, if you're really honest with yourself, there's so much going on, and they actually believe they're doing you a great service. They are now so damaged about this that they believe that their closest relationship is you, And that's not true either, isn't it? So you've actually taken them away from their soulmates in the process. And this is about coming to terms with the actual enormity of what happens when you avoid an emotion inside of yourself. Does that make sense? Yeah. Now, if you don't do those things, we're going to have another talk in 5 years' time about the fact that you still haven't attracted your soulmates, even though you think you desperately want them. See, at the moment, I would suggest to you, you don't desperately want them even. What you want, because if you desperately wanted them, you'd deal with some of these emotions. What you want is to slowly disengage. This is what your real feelings are. I'll slowly disengage the other men in my life, and at the same time, my soulmate will come along, and I won't have to go through any pain in the interim. That's really what you want, right? And for that reason, you sexually projected other men frequently. You know you do. You sexually projected other men frequently. You know you do. Because this is all about, sharing the emotions you're missing, right? And my feelings are on that matter, what you need to do is stop some of these addictions with men Stop getting them to do what you want. Stop getting your sons to give you all these emotions that you feel you need from them. Initially, they're going to think, what's wrong with my relationship? Because you've created them to actually want to do it.
Yeah.
So they're even going to be a bit like, they're going to be a bit at sea initially because they're used to the codependence in the relationship now, right? And you can, at that time, if they ask you, just explain, this is what I'm trying to do because I want to attract my soulmate. And instead of having a soulmate surrogate in you, I want to have my soulmate now, and I want to deal with all my addictions that I've got.
It's also
with you.
about soul's happiness as well. Ultimately.
It is a lot about his happiness because at the moment you can't let him go, and in terms of an emotional letting go, and as a result, he's never going to fully connect to his soulmate ever, right? And you know that his soul attraction is probably female as well, so that just adds to the issue, doesn't it? The fact that his soul attraction is female and you're a female and he's not letting you go. How is he ever going to have a proper relationship with a woman?
Yeah.
He's never going to have one. He's always going to revert back to mummy, right? And this has already damaged his life, and that's a part of seeing the truth of what you've created, why you've created it. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yeah. So there's a number of issues I've raised, and if you think about it, all I've done is gone through the actual blockages that have been there. So firstly, you're scared of the emotions involved, right? You have no faith that if you do it God's way, things are going to get better, really, because if you did, you would have already done it. You would have already given up your sons as the surrogate, and you would have already gone through some of these addictions. You also have had a very little will to do it, and the demonstration of that lack of will has been the fact that you still retain the addiction. Right? There's been little focus on addressing the addiction, which is the addiction, the codependent addiction with men. You love to get sexual feelings from men, and you love to get feelings that you have control of men, and these kind of codependent addictions are destroying they are repelling your soulmate from ever coming into your life. And then just ponder about the last thing that I said, and that was that if the soulmate attraction is the greatest attraction on this planet and you haven't yet attracted your soulmate, there's got to be some pretty big emotions preventing the attraction. Now, that doesn't need to frighten you. That's just there, right, which it did for you, Neena, in particular. That's just there to remind you of how much you're repelling them, how much you're pushing them away.
Or how much fear there actually is.
Well, that might be one of the emotions, but it's not the only one.
Yeah.
Because you have a lot of sexual addictions going on with men where you project sexually at them and you want them to notice you sexually. And so you'll find through the investigation of the addictions that there'll be all sorts of things that you didn't even consider. Like at the moment, you think you know what it's about, but until you go through the emotions, you won't really know what it's about. So my suggestion is to start with that intellectual awareness of the sin, start with the intellectual awareness of the damage it does, start with the intellectual awareness of what's God's laws about these principles and whatever, develop within you a desire to do it differently, and then focus heavily on what are my addictions here that keep me in my facade, with men. What do I really feel about men? What do I really want from them? Why do I want those things from them? What's going on? You're going to need to address those particular questions. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Now, when you address those questions emotionally, you will actually start going through some of the hurt child's feelings. Once you start processing through the hurt child's feelings, then healing your soul can begin to occur. And I'm not talking about your son's soul, I'm talking about your soul.
Well, both really, I guess.
But he will also start to have feel the effects. But in the process of feeling the hurt, you'll find you're removing the barriers to the natural attraction to your soulmate. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So you basically, imagine for a moment that you're there and I'm here and I'm your soulmate, and in between there's like all these concrete blocks. And those concrete blocks are your emotions. Does that make sense to you? Now, and are emotions that are causal or related to your childhood. When you pick up one of these blocks and actually process it and get out the jackhammer and jack it out and bash it out and let yourself feel all of it and release it, then there's one less concrete block between you and your soulmate.
Whether we're together or not.
Whether you're together or not,
Yeah.
there's one less block.
Yeah.
And then you lift out another one. Now, eventually, you might have to even lift out all of the blocks. Because eventually, because this is such a strong attraction between yourself and your soulmate, what will happen is there'll be enough blocks removed for you to actually attract your soulmate. And then you'll have to look at all the rest of it, what's left over. Does that make sense? You'll have to go through what's left over in your relationship, and that's where you'll get angry and frustrated with him and annoyed with him, and you get really bitter with him sometimes, and he might do the same with you, and you'll have to work through these issues as well if you really want to have a close relationship. So the first phase is removing enough of the blocks to even just attract him into your life, and then the second phase is removing the rest of the blocks so that you can actually love him.
Right.
Instead of just expecting him or expecting the job that he loves you.
Well, expecting him to be a solution.
Yeah, which he won't be, of course.
No.
In fact, he might add to your problems.
Yeah.
Because you have additional addictions and he will have addictions, and so you're going to have an escalation of the problems for a short period of time until he realises that he needs to do the same things you're doing.
Yeah.
Right? If he hasn't already realised that. Does that make sense?
It does.
So that's the steps to take from here. Now, what I want to make very clear to you, you have been unwilling to take these steps.
Mm-hmm.
So honour the fact that you've been unwilling. It's not a judgment, it's just a statement of a fact. We have proof because the soulmate attraction is the strongest attraction, and yet you haven't attracted them. Mm-hmm. Now that applies, doesn't it, to the majority of our audience probably. Most of you know that you've not yet even attracted a partner, let alone a soulmate. So this tells me lots of blocks going on, right? Lots of barriers, concrete blocks, if you like, which are all emotional between yourself and the attraction. So it's like for the average person, we've put lots and lots of blocks in between ourselves and our soulmate, which should be a natural attraction. If there were no blocks, we probably would have met them when we were 7, 8, 10, when we were very young. We would have met them automatically because it's such a strong attraction. God created it to be the strongest attraction. The fact that it's not the strongest attraction in our lives means that there must be lots of blocks. Now, sure, some of those blocks are his, but you can't do anything about that. The rest of the blocks are yours. And honestly, if you remove most of your blocks, he will come anyway, whether he's got blocks or not. That's how it works, right? He will be drawn anyway, because whether he's got blocks or not.
And I'll be feeling a lot better and happier in general
Of
anyway.
course. And also your own sons, who you've had your surrogate relationship with, will now be free to have a relationship with their own soulmates, which is one of the really important things to remember in all of this. Because while you're attempting to get all of your addictions met through that relationship, I know it feels bad, but there's still an attempt to get the addictions met through the relationship. While you're doing that, what's happening is that you are really preventing them from engaging their real relationship as well. So that's one of the compensatory effects of what you've created. So does that all make sense to?
I found that helpful.
Yeah?
It's just you've made it really clear.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel so too.
Yeah.